One, two.
What's up,
Oh,
Abby?
girl, so good to
Oh,
see you.
so good to see you too.
Long time no talk.
Long time no talk. Thank you everybody for tuning in today to the Video and Vinyl Club.
That's right. Welcome to the Video and Vinyl Club. I'm Emmy Wildwood. I am a musician, a producer, songwriter, an art director, and this is my co-hostess with the mostest, best friendest, till the endest. Sweet piece of ass,
I love it.
Aaron Mars.
Yeah, everybody, I'm Erin Mars, and I am a writer, director, and a monster enthusiast. And today we're going to be talking about not even one of, let me just, I think really my favorite. I think it's my favorite. I'm just going to go with that. I'm going to dive in and say, we're talking about my favorite monsters today, werewolves.
Wow.
Oh, baby. Let's howl at that
Oh!
moon. Oh, yeah. Uh, Emmy, thank
So,
you for the wonderful introduction as always. You
oh
beautiful,
yes.
stunning lady.
Thank you.
And thank you for also being open to doing another monster series because I know A, you don't like blood, and B, that's always involved in monster movies. So,
Listen, I would like to think that I have been converted into monster to a monster liker and also to because
oh,
I didn't know. I didn't
oh,
know. And I
great.
don't know what it is about me and like having and like science fiction and all that stuff. It's like, here's what it is. I figured it
Hmm.
out.
Hmm.
It's that when my life is calm, I love monster movies and science fiction
Yes.
and excitement. And then and then when my life is stressful,
Yeah.
I only want to watch stuff that makes me better understand that everything's going to be okay. Do you know what I
Yep.
mean?
Girl, I get it. I
No,
get
I
it.
mean, I
Yeah.
feel like I'm desensitized like aggressively though to everything now, the older I get, which is like a very awesome part about getting older. And so it's funny, I'm like ready to step into like werewolves.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, now is the perfect time. So, let's just jump in. So this is part one of our series, and I'm just gonna say it's part one and not tell you how many parts there are because I would love for us to this be a 12-part series, but I'm sure that Emmy's gonna push back and make this a shorter series than that. But anyway, this is part one. So I've one step closer to victory. Uh,
Like
so So we're going to be talking about the history and some of the folklore about werewolves today, and then talking about notable films. So some early films with werewolves and some of the evolution that the folklore and mythology has gone through over time.
Yeah, and
You
by the
excited?
way, I'm
Yeah.
really excited. I don't know anything about this. I mean, Teen Wolf is what I know about
Classic film.
werewolves. I didn't watch any werewolf movies as a kid besides Teen Wolf.
Teen
Eh,
Wolf, Michael J. Fox, one of
Yeah,
his opuses.
yeah, I know. Michael J. Fox. It is. The other opus is Back to the Future.
Another opus. Yeah,
Oh,
I love
Michael
it.
J. Fox, his
He's the
doc.
best. I love
I
Michael J.
know. Did you watch
Fox.
his doc on Apple TV?
I didn't. I haven't.
You
Um,
need to because it's like it actually goes way deep into all his experiences on mo different movie sets. So you'd like that.
ooh, okay, cool. I'll
Like
definitely check it out.
essentially that he had his Parkinson's like way back.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's a part of his energy and all that stuff.
Oh, I
And his
see.
quirk
I
sort of made him
see.
famous. Sort of made him in a way.
Oh,
So it's kind of like your blessings are your curses and so forth.
so true. So true.
Anyways, back to werewolves.
Back to werewolves. So let me ask you this,
Mhm.
Emmy, what do you know about werewolves? What basic level information do you know about werewolves?
That they're some sort of dog creature and they howl at the moon.
Okay.
I don't know anything besides that. I don't know who they hunt, what they hunt. I don't know if they hunt.
Okay.
I don't know. I know nothing.
Okay. Do you know anything? Okay, you know nothing.
I don't think so. I mean, besides Teen Wolf, which is he like?
Okay. This is gonna be great. This is gonna be great. And this gives me more of a feeling of confidence that this could be a multi-part series since we're going from zero. Okay, so let's just dive into the folklore, and I'm going to hit on some of the basics that people usually talk about when they think about a werewolf. This is very, very generalized terms, right? So people become a werewolf after they've been bitten by another werewolf. People become werewolves during a full moon, and the way to kill a werewolf is silver. They can't touch silver, so that's why they would need to have a silver bullet to
Oh,
kill a werewolf. Now, there's
okay.
different spin-offs of that. We're going to get more into it, but I'm going to be referencing. Sometimes I think people are like, is she just making this stuff up or where is she getting it from? So some of it I get from Wikipedia, but I also have this absolutely gorgeous book that my dog ripped the cover off of.
Oh,
And this is a book I use all the time. So he
is
was
your
jealous.
dog a werewolf?
My dog is a werewolf. So this book is called The Women's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets. And I love this book because it gives me so much information, usually about historical stuff, and it's really well written and just kind of a general, really great guide. So, where did the stories of werewolves begin? Obviously, we're going to jump into ancient times. One of the ways that it's been noted is that it was part of the medieval wolf clans belief system that was about a spirit wolf or a werewolf and as totemic gods in wolf form, which was something that people of the Greco-Roman world centuries earlier had also had the belief of. Basically, the stories of humans turning into wolves dates back to ancient Greece, probably even before that. So ancient Greece and Rome, right? The term lycanthropy, which is the word that means turn into a wolf, comes actually from King Lycaon, who was turned into a wolf by Zeus for serving human flesh. So that's part of the
Oh, Greek.
mythology that the word comes from, right? So Zeus punishes this guy, he turns him into a wolf. Now, in Norse mythology, warriors known as berserkers were said to channel the spirits of animals like wolves and bears to become extra savage in battle. And then when we get into the medieval period, the Middle Ages, there was a belief in werewolves that was tied closely into the witch hunts. So people often who were poor or mentally ill were being accused of being werewolves and executed, which unfortunately is something very real and very much that
Well,
happened.
I just realized that's where the term berserk comes from.
Hmm.
I use it all the time.
Yeah. In Eastern countries, in Eastern Europe, countries like Romania, Hungary, and Serbia added to that mythology, often mixing werewolves in with vampire lore. The belief was sometimes that a werewolf, upon death, could then rise up again as a vampire.
A werewolf
Um,
could become a vampire.
yeah, in some of the Eastern European tales. Lavinians, actually, which comes from the South Slavs, said that witches could routinely transform themselves into wolves by passing through a certain magic pool, another instance of a baptismal rebirth in animal form. There's a Polish legend that said a witch could transform a bride and groom into wolves by laying a girdle of human skin across the threshold at their wedding feast. Later, they would
Gross.
receive dresses of fur and would regain their human shape at will. The 7th century Council of Toledo issued severe denunciations of people who put on the heads of beasts or made themselves into wild animals. Italian peasants still say, Italian peasants, it's interesting they put it that way, right? So what, regular Italians? That's weird. Okay, they still say a man who sleeps outdoors on Friday under a full moon will be attacked by a werewolf or will become one himself. Friday was the night of the goddess, and the warning against her lunar influence probably dated back to the myth of Endiomin, which was the seduced moon man who fell asleep on her holy moon mountain and became her enchanted bridegroom, never to wake up again, so the goddess could shower her kisses on him each night. Woo, sounds a little like essay. Um, uh,
Yikes.
Yikes. Another story.
Consent.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you need consent, everybody. Another story that's traceable to the Wolf Clan traditions is obviously the tale of Little Red Riding Hood.
Oh,
And the giveaway details are the red garment, the offering of food to a grandmother deep in the woods, a grandmother who wore a wolf skin, and the cannibalistic motif of devouring and resurrection. So in Britain, a red woven hood was the distinguishing mark of a prophetess or a priestess. The story's original victim would have been not the red clad virgin, but the hunter as Lord of the Hunt. Like Snow White, Little Red Riding Hood was part of a Virgin Mother Crone trinity. Wearing the eclipse, she professed catastrophe and inspired much fear. Romanian churchmen declared that the eclipsed moon was reddened by her blood and shed when wolves attacked her to make men repent and turn from evil. In Gaul, let's go to Gaul. The Gaulish Diana had numerous wolf cultists
what's
among her.
gall?
Gaul? So, oh man, now I'm getting into my ancient Rome history here. So I'll just pull this off
Okay.
my head. So
Okay.
Gaul was basically the territories where there was like Germanic tribes. It wasn't like one defined area. Like Rome, um, when Caesar was in charge, right? He had
Hmm.
this thing where he was like took over parts of Gaul. They would fight, and it's like where the Celts lived.
Okay.
Okay, so the Celtic people. So anybody that fell under like Celtic peoples, Gauls, that's all like in this region that was not Rome. So we're talking, you know, England, Ireland, Scandinavian area, Germany, Bavaria, you know,
Got it.
Poland, Austria, like all this stuff, but even more closer to what we now is calling, we now know as Italy, where Rome originally was. So really it's like German, French, like all of that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
when the Romans kept going through to take over more and more lands, they just kind of generally were like, this is Gaul. So that's
Got
kind
it.
of historically. Now, if somebody is an expert in Roman history and understands better what Gaul is, hit us up with an email at the Video and Vinyl Club at gmail.com. We can get into it. But anyway, let's go back to werewolves. We got to concentrate
Okay.
on the
Yeah, yeah.
wolves.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
So in synopsis, in a way,
Yeah.
um, wolves are often associated with wildness and with women. Okay.
Interesting.
And of course, there's the common themes, the fear of the outsider or the fear of the animal within, the fear of a loss of control, especially connected to puberty, sexuality, or addiction.
Oh, that's
Um,
why Teen Wolf.
there's there's the association of the repression of primal instincts
Mhm.
and the duality of human nature, like man versus beast. So all of those things kind of touch on what werewolves, from lore represent in folklore and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And just back to some of the traits in folklore that we see again and again. You're transformed by a full moon or a curse or a magic spell. You're vulnerable to silver, like bullets or weapons. You have often involuntary
So weird.
transformations, which is like the classic arc, is that they're not able to control the moment they transfer. It's a full moon, baby, you're a werewolf.
Huh.
It's not changing. You don't have that.
Yeah.
Um, and that you can spread the condition by biting or scratching.
Hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk about some classic films with werewolves. There was The Wolf Man in 1941. This is the archetype, okay? Lon Chaney Jr.'s tragic performance set the tone of the Wolf Man for decades.
So this is the first movie that has a
No, there's
werewolf in
probably
it.
movies even before that, but
Oh, okay.
I'm just noting some classic
Okay,
films.
okay, okay.
Werewolf of London from 1935. That was
Mm-hmm.
like the first mainstream werewolf film.
Mm-hmm.
We have Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, 1948, where they introduced werewolves into the horror comedy genre. And then we
Mm-hmm.
have modern classics, and there's a lot, but so I'm just going to name a few, and then I want to kind of talk about some ones that are more specific that I really love. But
Okay.
we have An American Werewolf that came out in 1981, where it blends horror and dark comedy, and it's famous for its incredible transformation scene by Rick Baker.
Mm. I need to watch that again. I think I've seen that actually like a long time ago. I need to watch it again.
Yeah, it's I mean, obviously it's known for the transformation scene. And just to really quickly talk about Rick Baker for people who don't know, he was a special makeup effects creator and he was an actor and he was mostly known for his creature designs and effects. And he actually won the Academy Award for Best Makeup for 7 times.
Wow.
Yes, and he has a record 11 nominations.
Wow.
And yeah, and he won the inaugural award for An American Werewolf in London. So
Cool.
it's pretty notable as far as, to see. And if you're into special effects makeup and stuff, it's pretty in there. Okay, so that's one of them. Then of course we have another super duper classic, The Howling, came out in 1981. Another gem, and that's more psychological and surreal. And we have the Wolfman that came out in 2010 that was, kind of a gothic throwback and more stylish. Benicio del Toro was in that with Anthony Hopkins.
Oh.
We have, gosh, there's so many. The Company of Wolves, which came out in 1984, which is like a surreal fairy tale style feminist take.
Wait,
There's
what year was that?
1984.
Okay. Huh.
Then there's some other ones I want to note that I think are very specific. Ginger Snaps. Now, Ginger Snaps, it's a cult Canadian film
Hmm.
where lycanthropy, turning into a werewolf, is a metaphor for puberty and menstruation. And this girl, her name's Ginger, she's in high school, right? It's like she becomes a werewolf. It's such a good movie. It's
Really?
such a good movie. Yes.
Oh.
And to me, it really touches on
Is
this
she a
idea.
redhead?
Yes, I think she is. Ginger Snaps.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but it's great. And there's actually a second film from that with, I think, a separate title, but it is like Ginger Snaps Part Two, but they
Mm.
renamed it about the sister who carries on the whole thing. So it's just really fascinating. It's a really great
Whoa.
take on werewolves. I thought it was really awesome. It's one of my favorite werewolf movies.
Huh.
Then there's Dog Soldiers, which is the British military versus werewolves. It's kind of gritty, kind of fun, And then we have, obviously, we can't talk about werewolves without talking about the Underworld series. It's a gothic action film of werewolves versus vampires. There's like a love story intertwined there.
Oh. I don't know any of these
Okay,
movies.
you've never seen any of these.
No,
Okay.
but I guess
Okay,
that,
what about the Twilight Saga?
sure.
Okay, so the werewolves are in there, but they're like reimagined as Native American protectors. And
Okay.
so that's kind of like a controversial but popular take of, the series was, but like the way that they had werewolves in there was a little like, I don't know. There was the 2020 Wolf Walkers, which is a stunning animated film, which comes from Irish folklore.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go into some really, really top movies. 1985. We just already talked about it. Teen Wolf with Michael
Teen
J. Fox.
Wolf. I know all
Okay.
about that one.
You
I'm
know
just
all about
kidding.
that one. There was the movie that I love, which is starred Jack Nicholson. And I think I watch it maybe once a year. It's like by far my favorite werewolf movie. I just love it. And it's pretty simple and not super complicated. It's Wolf.
Oh
And it
yeah.
stars Jack Nicholson. He's a literary editor, turns werewolf, and it's like very sleek and I think kind of underrated. Michelle
Cool.
Pfeiffer's in it. It's got like some nice tones going on. I love it.
Okay.
Then there is of course the Netflix TV show that we talked about before when we're talking about Nosferatu,
Yeah.
and the actor who played Nosferatu, he played a werewolf on Hemlock Grove.
Hemlock Grove. Okay, yeah. I remember you told me about
Yeah,
this.
we were talking about that. That actor who played Count Orlok was Bill Skarsgård, who
Right, Bill
also played
Skarsgård,
the
of course.
clown in It, the remake of It. And he was on that show and he was really phenomenal, phenomenal.
Yeah.
So if you're really into like werewolf literature, TV, even the tabletop RPGs like Werewolf the Apocalypse, there's a lot of overlap with feminist theory, queer readings, there's addiction metaphors in werewolf stories, and
Mhm.
especially in like the indie and art house takes. There is a movie that I love. So when we go like deeper into werewolf theory or like legend and lore, there's a theme that I think is really interesting that comes up again and again. I find from one of the many werewolf books that I read that was a series about werewolves being basically extinct and being hunted by vampires, that this
Yeah.
theory was that vampires are actually just like more in the style of what from that movie Nosferatu. They're like monsters, they're gross, they're not
Y-
sexy at all. They're just like
Yeah.
bloodsuckers
Yeah.
versus werewolves who are like animals and like sexual and really,
Yeah.
hip and kind of they got more swag. They're into that like animal instinct kind of thing.
Yeah.
But also that women are wolves. That
Hmm.
it was a more feminine thing. And I loved that. And there's actually a Danish film that came out in 2014. Really phenomenal film. It's called When Animals Dream. Have you ever seen that film?
No, but I can't wait.
Okay, so basically the plot it focuses on this quiet teenager named Marie, and she lives in this fishing village in Denmark. And as she begins to go through puberty, she starts experiencing like weird physical changes. She's getting rashes. She starts to get facial hair. She has like a heightened sense of aggression. And her mom, throughout the film, she's like bedridden. They have her like in a room upstairs. She's just like, has some kind of illness and she's
Sorry.
just like away. Oh, bless you. But her father seems like he's kind of hiding something. So when you're watching the whole film, and I really encourage people to check it out because it's pretty cool, you're like, what is going on? Like it takes a second. It's a little bit of a slow burn in the beginning. And you just get this feeling like something is not right, like about the mom and kind of what's happening with her. And, you know, it basically goes into that she is dealing with a hereditary werewolf condition that has been kept secret by her family and is suppressed by the whole village. So everybody knows about what's going on. And as she's going through puberty and her transformation progresses, so does her awakening, both of a sexual nature and a supernatural nature, until
Whoa.
she finally embraces and understands what's like really happening. And it's
So,
just a
so,
freaking cool movie. Yeah.
I think I'm really starting to pick up on the themes here. So
Yes.
it's kind of like since women weren't allowed to like have sex drives or to act out in any way or to get angry or to be loud or to have any kind of attack like a um, reversion to our more animal selves the way men are allowed to. It was like we had to invent something, otherworldly to explain like hormones in general. And
Yeah.
like, yes,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think like, monsters and even the idea like okay, going back into like the history of things again, right? You think of
Mhm.
I'm going to talk about Rome again for a second.
Yeah.
When Rome was expanding into Gaul, and the people of Rome were, wearing tunics and were doing a certain kind of style and dress. And when they start going in and running into like the Celtic people and Gaul people of Gaul, these people are like if you think of the Vikings films that
Hmm.
you've seen and stuff, and they're like so much more animalistic in the way they're dressing, and
Hmm.
like the hair's braided, and they'll have like, the fur on them, and there's just this totally different vibe.
Hmm.
The Romans were like, what is this? And it was like kind of terrifying, right? Because they would like paint stuff on their face.
Hmm.
Their gods that they were worshiping were closer, had a closer association with animals in some cases. And so
Hmm.
there's that idea of like, that person's a real animal. Like they've
Hmm.
turned into an animal. And what
Yeah.
that kind of how terrifying that can be, right?
Yeah.
The tamed versus the untamed.
Hmm.
And it's something that we even see in regard to like portraiture. When you go to a museum and if you see like countries represented by goddesses, which used to be something in classical painting, they would paint like Britain as, this beautiful goddess and she's wearing all these jewels and stuff and she's sitting on a couch and then they'd have this other goddess like behind her or something and like one of her boobs is hanging out and she's wearing
Yeah.
green. That was supposed to be Ireland. And the reason she
Yeah.
has an exposed breast is because she's untamed.
Yes.
So if you see a goddess in a painting and they have like a part of their dress is off or like they're showing something, that's to show how they are wild and they're more
Yes, it's like
untamed. They're not really part of, the fully clothed,
it's like
proper, prim.
civil versus
Yes,
uncivil.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Perfect way to
Uh-huh.
put it. Yeah. Civilized versus uncivilized. Totally, totally,
Hmm.
totally. So it's really kind of cool.
That's way
Do
cooler than I thought.
good, 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 good.
Yeah.
And I think that, when we talk about adolescence and transformation, there's a real connection here with like the werewolf stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I know that when we were discussing vampires, it was so much more about in a sense like fear of death and fear of the other, but in a different way, right?
Yeah, yeah.
This is more about the ability for someone to control themselves,
Yeah.
to the man versus beast, the human versus inhuman, and what can trigger that and make that happen.
Or like woman versus loss of femininity versus or loss. It's very clear to me that hormones, I've already said it once, play into this, but that could be at any stage of a woman's life as they have all kinds of fluctuations that affect their personalities,
Yeah,
and their behavior.
yeah, yeah. And the idea of someone actually being a werewolf, like there's records from the 1500s where in France someone was condemned to death for being a lycanthrope. It wasn't, that means
What's a
werewolf. That's
lycanthrope?
a
Oh,
werewolf.
okay. Weird.
They were not like, put to death for being a murderer. They were not put to death for, cannibalism, which in this one case in 1521, these three men were induced by torture to say they had themselves become wolves with a magic salve they were given to them by the devil. And in the wolf shape, they had eaten children and enjoyed sexual relations with wild she wolves. Then we have Giles Garner.
Sounds like they did drugs and lost their
Yeah,
wits
it sounds like they were
and
eating some weird mushrooms in the
yeah,
woods.
and did some crazy shit and they needed some way to
Hmm.
explain it. Yeah.
Yeah. Giles Garnier was a famous lycanthrope who was caught by the Inquisition, tortured, and executed for having devoured children. The charge was not murder or cannibalism, but lycanthropy. Whatever was left of the pagan wolf cults, it seemed that the Christian church molded the material into the enduring legend of the werewolf.
So it's like someone has a psychotic episode and they're like, "Oh, you're a werewolf." Whereas with vampires, it's like somebody is seductive and smarter than you, and so they must be a vampire.
Yeah, in some
Yeah,
ways,
yeah, yeah.
definitely. I mean, I think when we go into, deeper into the idea of like wolf cults and any kind of religion that's more associated with nature, the moon comes into having a bigger role, let's say, right?
Yeah.
And like we look at cycles of when people would plant seeds and would pull crops and having those things flow in connection with moon cycles. And
Right.
the wolf being so associated with the moon is also part of the connection between the culture of the religion associated with wolves and
Yeah, but
their,
you know what else is tied to the moon cycle, right?
yeah, women having their period.
Women having their periods.
Hmm.
And that is everything to do with gravity.
Yes.
So it's true. It's the moon is as it moves closer, the your gravitational pull changes, right? Isn't that the whole thing? And it can have an effect on your body
Well, so yes, so the
physically.
the the moon affects our tides, right? It
The
affects the
tides,
ocean.
exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
so the
So,
moon affects the ocean and tidal patterns, but it affects a lot more. Like
yeah.
it does definitely, and I say this because my mother worked in an emergency room on the night shift when I was a kid, and they all were like, when it's a full moon and you're working, get ready for a really crazy night because
For
like
real?
nuts, yeah, more people would come in. That's why it's called lunacy because it's associated with going crazy because of the moon. If you're
Because
a lunatic, that's like
what?
moon crazy. Yes.
It
So
has
there's
to have a basis in science, I swear. It has to be like something it has some sort of pressure effect on your body and water on the brain and it makes people weird. I'm not kidding. It's always something like that at the bottom
no,
of
I
it.
mean, I think there statistically is associations and findings that, totally make sense. And just from the standing of like when there's a full moon, you can see more outside at night. And when there's
Yeah.
not a full moon, you really can't. So
Yeah.
often people have more problems sleeping at night when there's a full moon versus when there's a new moon.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we got a little bit turned around, but
Not really. It's right on target. I didn't know how much werewolves had to do with periods, which is hilarious. And like hormones. You've named like three movies that have to do with girls getting going through puberty and shit, and teenagers going through puberty. I mean, I just can't. Anyways, go ahead.
yeah, and I think it's about your body changing, right? It's an easy
Yeah.
metaphor for the changes that happen to your body when you're going through puberty. You become crazy. You start growing hair and you're like, what's going on? You like get
Yeah.
taller really fast. Some people, you're off
Stronger.
balance. Your
Yeah.
emotional center is totally shifted. The chemicals in your brain are all different. You're all like,
Yeah.
you're actually crazy during that period of time. So to make that connection with werewolves and teenagers, I think is a pretty easy
Yeah, sure.
connection, but I think
Sure.
that it like totally makes sense because of the way that they're associated.
I
So,
also didn't, I have never in my life thought of werewolves as feminine. Never.
yes. Well,
Pretty cool.
yes, as a writer,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big thing for me. The idea of wolves and women
Yeah.
together. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, um, she has this book called Women Who Run with the Wolves, and it's myths and stories of the wild woman archetype. It's a
Mm.
wonderful book. Have you read that book?
No.
Oh, you've got to read this book. You've got to read this book
All right.
because it talks about like the powerful force that lives within women and the association again, not fully, but like she ties to myths, she ties to legends, she ties to wolves. And I think that's so true because
Mm-hmm.
we have, you can say going back and looking from the biology of something, dogs are associated with wolves, but dogs are actually also very associated with women, hear me out on this,
Mm-hmm.
is because often,
Bitches.
well, there's that, but often, women and dogs have a close relationship because the dog would help protect the house when the husband was away or the man was away. They were another force to be in alignment to help protect the home. And so the woman was with the dog a lot, right?
Mm.
And so there's that association of just women and canines. But anyway, Yeah, and you can just think of like women cannot be tamed. Well, she's a werewolf. She's a she-wolf, you know?
Yep,
So, fun things to talk
I
about
like it.
and highly recommend, Dr. Estes' book because of the dive into the female psyche and, the knowing of the feminine soul.
I
But
like it.
yeah, anyway, it was a pleasure talking to you. And what we should tell our listeners, what are we doing now?
What are we doing now? Now that Erin's given me a very big background on werewolves in history and the origin story and the folklore and so forth, we thought it would be a super fun idea to watch Wolfman, the movie.
Wolfman, the new
Yeah,
Wolfman
the new
film.
Wolfman. It's 2025. It is called a horror movie, and it stars Christopher Abbott and Julia Garner from Ozark. That's Ruthie. Ha 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 ha. And she was also played Anna in Inventing Anna. Anyways, really excited to see this movie. I've heard mixed things. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've seen the opening scene. It was dope. Can't wait to finish it. We are really excited for Wolfman next week. It
We're
was a Golden
very,
Globe nominee. So we thought that would be a great way to finish.
mm-hmm.
Continue our
Well,
Wolfman
yes, we'll see.
series.
Continue. I mean, because I think, and I forgot to tell you this earlier, there's
Hmm.
actually a werewolf movie that's not necessarily the best, but it's called Arizona Werewolf.
No.
Hmm.
When? Where?
That came out
How?
in 1996.
I gotta watch it.
You gotta watch it. Yeah.
I wonder where they are in Arizona. My place? Tucson?
I don't know.
Phoenix? Boo. Bless you. We're sneezing so
Oh,
much
we
today.
are. It's springtime, everybody.
The allergies are on fleek. Well, we don't give a vinyl rating for this because we haven't watched anything yet, but I would give your telling of Werewolf Folklore a 10, Erin.
Thank you so much. And
That was
thank you for that.
that was so
10,
ingenuine. You're like, thank you so
10 out of
much.
10. Oh, and when we talk next week about the Wolfman film, I also will go over a few more werewolf movies people should check out. Not that we have to review them at all, but I'm going to go over a list of
Okay.
my top movies
The
involving werewolves.
the one sticking with me is Ginger Snaps, so I'm gonna go find that.
Yeah, you got to watch Ginger Snaps.
Okay, fine, I will.
Love ya. Thanks
Love
for
you
everything.
too. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye bye.
Bye. 1, 2.